Hi there. Let's continue looking at Rainn Wilson on his journey in the PogChamps 2021. Not PogChamps, as I might have sometimes said. PogChamps. Okay, so his opponent Turbo Fisto, who's Charles White Jr., better known by his online alias Critical or MoistCr1TiKaL, Big MoistCr1TiKaL, Big Moist. All those are AKAs. So he's an American YouTuber, Twitch streamer, podcaster, actor, musician, writer, and businessman. And there might be a few other things as well. So he does a variety of stuff. So here we see Rainn Wilson kicking off with e4. We see the Sicilian defense, knight f3, knight c6, and now b3. Very interesting choice by Rainn Wilson. Knight f6, e5. The knight goes back. This does sometimes have a positional advantage. By encouraging this pawn here, it's going to be hemming in sometimes this bishop, and sometimes the knight can actually reroute to make use of the f5 square. So, for example, knight e7 could appear later to f5 once the pawn moves, or this way. So sometimes this could be positionally bad for white. We see bishop b2, d6, d4, and now actually queen a5 check. And here is already a bit of a problem for white. Yeah, something's gone slightly wrong here, it seems. It seems slightly uncomfortable. After knight c3, c takes d4. Knight takes d4, yes. It seems here black could have actually capitalized on this situation rather well with queen takes e5 check. So, for example, knight ce2, knight f6, and you can see that the tactics favour black. This knight's pinned. It seems a bit outrageous maybe to put the queen there in line, but it's okay for black. In the game, this was slightly less accurate d takes. This is a mistake. It allows white to actually get a decent position. The funny thing is, after b takes c6, this is a really good move that white plays, in fact. 5 seconds, because actually the top engine move, what would you play with white? It's actually, a really, really accurate move. To Rainn Wilson's credit, to exploit the new situation here. Okay, it's actually queen f3. Yeah, fantastic move looking at c6. We have bishop b7, and white has a great position here after castling queenside. This is just a very, very nice position. We see e6, bishop c4, bishop a3, rook h e1, bishop takes, king takes, rook b8. And we see now queen g3, g6, rook takes e5, queen c7. Now this queen on g3, yeah, is in line with the queen on c7. So these x-rays are kind of a prelude often to dangerous tactical ideas. And in fact here, white could actually use a dangerous tactical idea to win the queen, but that was missed actually. There is an idea to win the queen on c7 using this x-ray. I wonder if you can spot it if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Okay, the move rook takes e6 check would actually expose an attack on that queen. This will be winning. Just take the queen. Yeah, but in the game, we actually have rook e3, which still exposes an attack on the queen, but unfortunately black blundered horribly with knight e7 instead of, say, taking the queen. Yeah. So this is a queen blunder, which unfortunately ruins the game somewhat, I have to say. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, MoistCr1TiKaL didn't play a critical enough line, and is just totally outgunned in this position. So rook c7 helps simplify there. Queen g5, queen f6, rook d8 check, simplifying. It's really all over. After knight e4, black resigned. So a crushing win there from Rainn Wilson. But there was, in this opening skirmish, there was a moment there where after queen a5 check, which was a good move to undermine white's structure, there's this opportunity, instead of d takes, for queen takes e5 check. So we can see that it's a lot more solid without leaving a target on c6, which is that exploitable. You have bishop e2, then knight takes. So if the knight's brought back, one of the knights brought back, this is just a fantastic position for black. So missed opportunity there for black. But the brilliant move, Queen F3, really, after knight takes, really was a great follow-up move to castle queenside. This is really fantastic compensation for white. So yeah, Rainn Wilson played really a cool game here. So the Queen G3 is also, of course, it's hitting G7. It's looking at B8. So maybe that makes it more understandable, these moves. Why here, Queen C7 was like trying to safeguard. But the queen itself, yeah, to rook takes e6 was a liability here. Unprotected pieces do tend to fall off, is the common motto in chess. But also, these X-rays, this is very, very dangerous. But queen f3 really, caused a lot of damage. The queen f3 to g3, some genius there from Rainn Wilson in my view. So great stuff. So let's go on now to game 2. Okay, in game 2, Rainn Wilson playing with the black pieces against Turbo Fisto, aka MoistCr1TiKaL, etc. So e4 from MoistCr1TiKaL, d6, d4, g6. So Piot's defense. We see knight c3, bishop g7, bishop c4, knight f6. Now a very good move from white with an e5 plan. Very dangerous. Black castles e5. We see now d takes. This is a bit of a mistake because it opens up this d file. Best it seems in this position is actually knight fd7, and it seems a bit counterintuitive to allow this damaging looking, this visually crushing move, but actually it's not that crushing. Yeah, well, it's only got a small edge there, but in this case after d takes, this is much more big trouble here. We see a blunder move, knight g4, which makes things even worse now. Knight d7 or would be preferred, but here with knight g4, white now plays e6, and also by doing this cuts off this connection to the g4 knight, so that knight is now hanging. We see bishop takes e6, so this is a mistake actually. Knight e5 would have been much better. After e takes f7, knight takes bishop e3. White has an advantage here though, but it's not like a piece down for black. In the game, after bishop takes, we see bishop takes e6, and unfortunately, yeah, if the ordinary recapture, white can actually just take g4 or just take en route e6 and then g4. There isn't much of a backfire here. It's good to look out for the backfires after a tactical sequence, but there doesn't seem to be one here. So anyway, bishop takes e6 was played, bishop takes, and now knight e5. So black is now playing a piece down. That's a bit of an unfortunate incident in the opening. We see c5 here, bishop f4, knight e6, rook d1, queen a5, bishop d2, e6, knight f3, a6, white castles, b5, knight a4 hitting the queen, b4 good shield for the queen and protecting, c5 good move there, bishop e3, knight e5. We see bishop takes c5, and it looks as though this is absolute carnage after this, because it's actually, yeah, it's like undermining black, it's hitting the rook. Yeah, it looks pretty bad here. It looks as though they're going to have to go into a playoff at this rate. We see rook c8, yeah. Knight takes e5, so winning a second piece. Now black takes on c5 at least to get 2 pieces there for the rook. But white here is essentially, big material up. White's an entire rook up after all this, after the dust has settled. And now plays knight d7. We see queen c6. And now white seems to get very overexcited. It's very understandable how this sort of stuff happens. Maybe white's trying to capitalize on the pieces are still in the box. It looks as though, this needs to be punished, and there should be a crushing way to punish this. And plays knight f6 check. There is a big snag to this move. Also, there is, a potentially huge upside though, which was probably excited white in calculation. The huge upside is, king f8, rook d8 check looks very, very dangerous. Whether it is actually dangerous is another matter, though, because for example here, the king could take there. but it looks kind of dangerous. It is actually much more dangerous if here than rook d8 check. And you can see, you know, some damage is done. But again, you know, the king could be a bit carnivorous. It's not always entirely clear-cut. But anyway, for whatever the reason, this moment of excitement led to this move, which unfortunately also bishop takes f6. I'm sorry to laugh, but it's a really disastrous move because end sequence, this is a comedy sequence actually. Bishop takes f6 actually protects the d8 square, which is rather even more unfortunate, yeah. But white plays this anyway, it seems, as if this has been pre-moved, which I find a bit strange. Pre-moving, you know, even in bullet chess, is a very dangerous thing to do, to pre-move. And in fact, in any normal game of chess, any long time control, you might have moves like cache, like, you know, like browser caching. You might have moves that you have the intention of playing. But chess is such a rich game with so many resources that really you've got to look at the new position, the new possibilities, and not always play what you've just kind of intended to play. And this is one of those cases that's actually a very dramatic illustration. Yeah, that it's just no longer at all effective, this move. It could have actually been taken. Yeah, these moves, you have to look at the new situation. Moves that you thought were going to be effective or sequences, they might not be at all. You've got to reevaluate. You might have miscalculated. So it's based on a miscalculation. But it was let off with king g7. So yeah, it was let off, and we have rook d3, now knight d7. So black's back in the game with a vengeance. Back in the game here. In fact, yeah, the material situation now, it's equal on pawns, but white has the exchange up. Two rooks and bishop versus rook and knight and bishop. But it's much more difficult now. After f4 we see queen b5, a4, queen f5, another oops moment here. This drops the knight on d7. This is a big oops moment. So yeah, we have, you know, the situation, if b takes en passant, which is a legal move in chess, knight c5, white's only slightly better here. Black's pretty solid. Okay, so this is another oops moment, dropping the d7 knight. Okay, so white is now a rook up, bishop takes b2, g4 is played, queen c5 check, king h1, and unfortunately, yeah, this g4, you know, generally, you don't want to be sort of dancing on ice later. You don't want to sort of make your position more difficult to play than needed. So the skeleton around your king, generally, this is good to sort of keep the skeleton tight, you know, close, the body armor to the king to avoid annoying checks. This is a classic illustration why such moves, although they might not immediately lose, the exposure to your king, you know, to checks can lead to horrible, disastrous things happening, like loose pieces dropping off even more with a much greater gravity, because you've reduced king safety with a move like g4. And in fact, we kind of immediately see a horrible consequence after queen c5 check. White should have played, white is able to play rather, queen f2 without worrying about bishop d4, you know, because the rook's covering d4. And if this is the case, then that should have been played. You know, queen f2 is a playable move here. But unfortunately, and this is a consequence of g4, you see that exposure now, the increased exposure to checks, really is a disaster after queen c6 check, picking up this unprotected piece. So yeah, it's a common theme in chess. You know, you want to make the positions easier to play. You don't want it to be like dancing on ice, where, you know, the slightest slip up and you've just broken your leg, you know, in chess terms, or lost the rook, this is like, you know, breaking a leg. Excuse the metaphor. Okay, but yeah, it just made the position much more difficult to play essentially by moving this pawn around the king. You don't really want to do that unless it's a really exceptional situation. Generally, the moves you want to play, they should strive to make your position easier to play, because we're all, you know, as humans, we're very tactically weak compared to chess engines in general. So this reliance on kind of safety first principles and principles in general is essentially very important in human chess. So it's like principle breaking to create unnecessary weaknesses, which makes the position more difficult to play. So here, the consequence is black's back in the game. So this isn't a mouse slip. The rook's going to be picked up now. I mean, so rook d5 was played. But it so happens here, white did have a saving resource. Can you see what white could have played if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? Okay, white could have actually played queen g2, and actually you can see that there's an x-ray on this a8 rook, which saves the day for white in terms of keeping the material up. This is just winning still as well. So unfortunately, it was compounded with rook d5. That was a panic response instead of queen g2. We see now e takes. So again, after all of that, the dust settling here, it's starting to be about equal, this position, with opposite coloured bishops. Generally, these increase the chances of a draw sometimes. Sometimes it's good for the attacker, though, to have a different bishop, the opponent. We see how rook e8, queen g2, bishop d4 check, king h1, queen c3, queen takes d5. And we see now rook f8, protecting f7. So there's a fight going on, and it looks very, very dangerous in some respects. Although it looks visually dangerous, the bishop is covering dark squares. Black is stronger in theory on the dark squares, white on the light squares. We see a5, f takes, h takes. And now, yeah, this is dangerous. Rook takes f7, check. Yeah, black maybe should have played this a little bit more in a solid manner. As an example, you know, g5 maybe would have kept this issue of f7 at bay. And if f6, you know, taking here, it's protected by the queen. It looks safe enough anyway. But this one, yeah, this does lead into trouble here. We see, you know, offering the f7 pawn. It's interesting to consider this way, not losing a pawn. But already, you know, it looks like white's got a scary attack here anyway. So this pawn was given up. Rook takes, queen takes, king h6, h4. But white's king is exposed here. If queen f8 check, black does have resources in this position, but has to be careful. Bishop g7 looks as though that's not getting mated, as an example. But we see white trying to weave a mating net here with h4 of some sort. We see now check, though, and these are really annoying checks. Check, check, check. Taking a pawn with check, that's really annoying. Check, check. And now, yeah, the queens get exchanged off, and this is actually getting to be a rather peaceful position. And, okay, white gave back the pawn. Doesn't really matter. This is a position which is very difficult for either side to win because of the opposite coloured bishops. We see black going after the a-pawn, it seems. In fact, if king a3, bishop b5, though, so it's difficult, actually, it seems, to win a pawn here. So bishop check, and then now we see this move. Okay, so that pawn's given up, which is interesting. But check and king there. And here we see king b2. King d3. Yeah, maybe black should have tried to do something, but the thing is, if black plays a4, the king's stuck, you know. Essentially, this is still a little bit tricky, this position, for black to try and win it. As an example, say here we take, and say b3, taking here, the bishop's just in time to catch the pawn, yeah? So it doesn't really matter about that, it's going to be equal. So, yeah, it seems as though it's fizzled to a drawish situation here, regardless of that pawn dropping on a4. So we have here king d3, bishop going back, bishop a4, and this sets up a blockade, and they actually agreed to draw, so by agreement. So that's great stuff. So Rainn Wilson with the black pieces played kind of hair-raising game there, was getting absolutely smashed objectively, I'm afraid. In the opening, losing a piece, brutally losing a piece. And it seems, yes, this principle of making the position more easy to play or more difficult to play is a big thing in human chess generally. And yeah, this added to black's pain, actually, losing c5. But, you know, it's a difficult position here. What does black actually do about c5? This is a very, very painful position for black to play in. In fact, you know, knight d7, just take it off. So it's a very difficult position. So it's a sort of miracle that black was able to get back. And that's right. Rainn Wilson has said he could be the new Jesus doing miracles, actually. But the miracle happened soon with knight f6 check being played. It's a miracle that this was played. And it's a miracle that rook d8 was played and not tapped into. So yeah, a lot of fun in these games. You don't usually get this amount of fun in games. Then the d7, unfortunately, yeah, instead of it en passant, I mean, queen c6 would also have been adequate to protect d7. But unfortunately, very generous play from black to be a rook down. But white, you know, with the dancing on ice move g4, weakening the king, and not playing queen g2 here. Unfortunately, this leads to a position which, despite it still being scary on f7, quite pretty scary on f7 actually, black just survived to tell the tale. A very, very dramatic game, I have to say, actually. Very dramatic game, very exciting. But anyway, okay, and I'll just fast forward. So basically, congratulations to Rainn Wilson. I believe he enters the semi-final. There is something to his play. I think he has a cheeky style of play. He has got some ideas about chess. And I don't know how he's made this decision not to play like mainstream Sicilian, but the stuff with b3 is very innovative. Even Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, has experimented with some b3 stuff, and other very strong players. It's a very, very innovative approach when he plays against a Sicilian. Sorry, that was game one. This is game two. Let's keep relevant. Okay, keep relevant. So anyway, Rainn Wilson, yeah, congratulations. I think he's in the semi-final now. So he was my favourite character in The Office, so it's remarkable to see him playing chess. That's really great stuff. So, by the way, if you want to check out my new courses at Udemy, Kingscrusher.tv/chess openings, and that's a brand new one, a fun lover's guide to chess openings. And these are with discount codes, these links, and also Kingscrusher.tv/chess tactics. Those are my two core courses, which I really recommend, and there's other ones there as well. Okay, so comments, questions, likes, shares, subscribes, all appreciated. Thanks very much.